grow in your faith, not going to grow spiritually unless you're connected to Jesus. Right, verse 20. If with Christ you die to the elemental spirits of the world, the principles of this world, why, as if you were still alive in the world, do you submit to its regulations? Do not handle, do not taste, do not touch, referring to things that are all perish as they are used, according to human precepts, and teachings. These have indeed an appearance of wisdom in promoting self-made religion and asceticism and severity to the body, but they are of no value in stopping the indulgence of the flesh. There's a lot here. I'm going to try and cover it the best that I can this evening and try to explain it the best that I can. There's a lot of information here. I want to highlight, I just want to observe a few things before we get into this. He begins talking, he says, see to it that no one, in verse 8, see to it that no one takes you captive. I believe King James or New King James might say beware. It says beware. So this is more than just, this is a real caution here. He's saying this can really trip you up if you don't understand what he's saying here. So he's saying, listen, don't be held captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to human traditions, according to the elemental principles of the world, and not according to Christ. So he's looking, what is philosophy? What does it mean, philosophy? Philosophy means to love wisdom. It's anyone living by certain convictions. If you're living by certain convictions, you have a philosophy of life. If I were to go with you to your house, or you came with me to my house when we were raising our sons, you would say, they have a philosophy of how they raise their boys, right? That we develop these philosophies in our marriage, in our communications. We develop these things, and many of these things are called philosophies. So godly wisdom, philosophy means to love wisdom. Godly wisdom, as James 3:17 says, but the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Boy, that's a lot of wisdom there, right? You know, if you're walking in those things, you're having to use wisdom and understanding that your wisdom, your certain convictions are promoting the philosophy of your life. In this passage here, he's writing to the Colossians, and he's saying, I'm summarizing some of this. Outward manifestations are practically irrelevant in Jesus. The things that we deem important on the outside, when you are following Jesus, Jesus says, no, the more important thing is what's going on in here. Right. So what many times Jesus would deal with, he would deal with Pharisees, Sadducees, the religious, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But many times he would deal with them and he would say, listen, you're worried about the outside of the cup, but you don't clean the inside of the cup, right? And so we need to understand the outward is not as important as the inward, right? And sometimes we trip that up, especially in church, right? Like I was raised in a time, in an era of church, maybe PK too, where I never came to church without a suit and tie on, right? And they were fine suits and ties. Baggy, come on, pinstripes, right. You know, back in the 90s, that's what you came to church in. You know, that's what you wore. Man, it took a lot to get that out of me, right? I was like, man, how can I go to church without wearing a tie? Am I even saved? Come on, somebody, right? You know, I mean, that's what I was facing, you know. And there were people, and even there are people today that have church, right? And that if you show up at church with certain clothing, right,